Hi, I'm Amanda, Director of Social Media Strategy at March, and this is Zarina.
Hello, I'm the social media associate at March as well.
And we're going to be talking a little bit about Clubhouse. It's the app that everyone is very excited about and asking lots of questions about. Zarina and I have gotten a lot of questions. We ask each other a lot of questions about it. It's fun to discuss because it's so new and there's so much going on with it. But if you're unfamiliar with Clubhouse, first, it is an app that's available on iOS right now, and it is an audio-only networking app. So unlike most social media platforms where it's text-based, or the video chats that people have been doing on Zoom, it's audio only on Clubhouse. And what's so interesting with that is it is like a live podcast almost, right? It's a podcast that you can drop into and listen to and interact with, right? Because the way that it's built is that whoever's hosting the discussion for the day gets to chat, but then people can be called up and interact and engage with them. So I think it's closest to a podcast, right? Zarina,
I was going to say the same thing, like a live podcast, like it's happening now and you can jump in whenever.
Exactly. So it's really interesting. You can drop in at any time, listen to conversations that are going on. If you're on the platform, you can set up a conversation and just start one anytime, and people just come and go into their conversations that they want. There's a lot that's happening there, and it's really interesting because there's not a lot of parameters or rules on how people are chatting with each other. It's very organic. But very interesting because there's been a lot of people that have been carving out like niche topics and discussions. So it's really fascinating to see the types of conversations happening there. Right?
I was going to say, I was just scrolling through it and going through the hallway, if you will, of topics. And I couldn't believe how many things people were talking about.
Yeah. It's like, there's like no limits to the types of conversations that people are having. Which makes it really fun because there's so much to explore, but also really challenging for someone who wants to like dive in, because it makes it hard to know, where to start.
Right.
I think
exactly.
That's part of why there are so many questions about Clubhouse, because where do you start? Like literally, how do I get going on this? And part of it is also like, how do I literally get into the app, right?
How do I
get in? Like it's in
how do I get into this
only.
club?
Exactly. So Zarina, do you want to like talk us through a little bit about how you get in the club?
Yes. So as much as it is growing in the last year, they have this kind of level of exclusivity. So one way, so you invited me. You have to get an invite from someone. Right now it's only available on iPhones. So it's, they're trying to work and expand their audience to Android users. No timeline in place, but it's coming. But yeah, so it's kind of, I was talking about with this like earlier with you, about this whole idea of exclusivity. And I do have to say that I think that this exclusive factor of it only being, one invite only per person, and also with a certain kind of user, I think it almost built it on this platform where, if someone finds out something's exclusive, they get more excited and then they want to learn about it and then they jump onto it rather than just an open platform that anyone can join. I do think it's going to expand, and invite a lot more people in there, but it still has that kind of level of exclusivity still, which I think is appealing to a lot of people.
I agree. I think it's super appealing to feel exclusive because it's it's like a club, right?
Yes.
Like you have to make the list, you have to like know someone to get in. And I think part of that, you have to be referred in by someone, helps with who's on it and like the quality of conversations that you're having, right? So like it started out really small and the people that initially, and then it built from there. But every time you pull someone onto the platform, you're essentially vouching for them, right? So it's a different type of community, because it's people that like want to be there. Whereas, some of the other social platforms are known for starting out really strong and then eventually being taken over by trolls or other things that happen, and like all the bots. But there isn't a natural way for even bots to get in there because it's tied to your phone number and like it's all audio. So unless a bot has like come up with some Siri sounding voice modulator, it's it's a lot harder, and you have to be called up to stage. So like there's a lot of things and features that, because it's exclusive and then because the way it's structured, make it so different, and help with some of the quality controls that we're seeing on some of the other social platforms right now.
Yeah. I also I wanted to go back on that a little bit about how it is only audio, which I have to say I found very appealing to me. I think that a lot of people, when talking to them about Clubhouse, they like the idea of how inclusive it is and how you can have conversations and put out questions out there and talk to people that you normally wouldn't be able to have a conversation with, or it requires many, many meetings and calendar invites, and you know how that works. But they were saying that without the video kind of there, it's just less of a pressure, and they feel more open to speak their mind and speak freely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was having a similar type of conversation with people on how real Zoom fatigue is right now, and that,
oh my God,
like, it's a lot to be on video and be engaged with people. And it's not because you don't want to, it's just that it's so hard to be engaged on a screen because you can't make eye contact the same way. But all of that is stripped away in Clubhouse. Like, you physically cannot make eye contact because that's not how it is. You can listen to it in the background. I've heard a lot of people like listening to conversations in their car if they are commuting again, much like they would a podcast, right? Like, because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be super on. You can kind of listen to it in the background. There's a lot less pressure to perform while you participate.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was also scrolling. I was looking at everyone who was kind of on it, and you notice a lot of individuals who are leading discussions and inviting other people. But I was actually curious on how brands could possibly leverage this new platform.
Yeah, it's such a good question. It's like the one that I think I'm fielding every week from everyone, right?
I'm sure.
It's like, how do I get on there? What do we do? And it's interesting because for brands, I know that they're asking it because they're like, do I need to make this part of my marketing program? Like, does this have to be like what I'm doing? It's kind of like how back in the day, everyone's like, do we need to be on Snapchat? And I'm like, maybe not though, right? So it's also kind of maybe not here too on Clubhouse. But I think for a brand perspective, there's so much that is going on. It's just not something that like a brand is going to be able to use in the traditional sense, because right now brands can't actually even be on Clubhouse. Like, there's no @ brand name. Like, that's not a user, right? It's only tied to people. So it's
who could be representing that brand, but I have noticed that too.
Exactly. So it's like the PR value from Clubhouse is really about thought leadership and supporting your thought leaders in different ways. The way I've kind of been talking and counseling some clients is that it's a great way to build relationships and a way to get people more comfortable having conversations. For example, if they're trying to get more speaking engagements, this is a less pressured way to get their thoughts and make sure that they're a great speaker when they don't have the ability to also like present themselves. Right. Like, your thoughts have to be so clear and so crisp to be able to present it when you don't have any visuals to rely on or even body language to rely on, feedback from your audience because you're not really getting that either. So there is value there, but from a thought leadership perspective, less so from a brand being able to market itself.
Okay.
What's interesting too, you and I have talked about this a little bit, Zarina, is that one of the trends we're seeing overall on social is consumers are liking to have conversations about brands where the brand doesn't interact, right? We've definitely seen this happening on Facebook where like private dark groups are really popular, like, and people are going in there and they're sharing recommendations about brands that they like and sharing information, but the brands are not part of it. Clubhouse kind of is the same way right now, right? Yeah. But instead of just regular people, you can have your thought leader there. You can have them participating. Pro con is that you can't necessarily, if you don't have enough invites to go around to your marketing team, you may not know what your thought leader is saying, and that might be scary for some. But I still think there's some potential. It's just, you have to recognize it's from the people perspective, not the brand perspective. They all connect together in the end, but it's a little bit different.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I've seen a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. But I know you were doing some reading on Clubhouse in how it relates to influencers. You want to talk a little about that?
Yeah. So it's, as you mentioned, just the individuals and you have their profiles on there. But I have been reading and also talking to some influencers that we've worked with, that it is a great place for them to be networking and maybe come into like play with some other people who represent brands that they wouldn't necessarily think about representing, you know, and like, and then they get excited about it and it's conversations for them to have. And also they had mentioned that it is a great way for them to do collabs, but with other influencers, which is really exciting because you
Cool.
don't see a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
Usually see like a brand vetting an influencer, who is really, I guess, excited about that brand and can talk about it. But now you have two influencers collaborating together, and I think it's like a really great network and also another field that hasn't really been explored. So it's exciting to see where that will lead.
Yeah, yeah. If I can ask a follow-up on that one. So, so is it like influencers endorsing each other, or like what does that look like? What are you seeing? Like what are you reading
Yeah, no,
about?
so I've seen that. I've also seen influencers who might want to be going into a different industry, right?
Oh,
So when you and I have been reaching out to our friends or other influencers, you know, usually they're in the tech industry or wherever they might be, or very focused on beauty. And now maybe someone wants to kind of expand that and go into, say, travel or something like that. So it's them asking other questions, but also in ways that maybe their two worlds have collided, and
mm-hmm.
how they can kind of interact with each other on that.
That's really interesting. I think that's like
Yeah,
such a great example of like what Clubhouse can do though, right?
definitely.
It's more about lifting other people and like connecting them, sharing insights in a more casual way, but a really helpful way.
Hmm. And like expanding their horizons.
Yeah, because it's not the same as doing a cold call to someone and being like,
Right.
"Hi, can I like tap your brain for a few minutes?" Because then it puts so much like emphasis on one person to want to do that. Whereas this, you've opened yourself up to be like, "Oh, so you're thinking about becoming a travel influencer. Well, here's like what I had to do and here's things you should know." Like they've opened themselves up rather than being forced to decide
Right.
if they want to help
E-
someone or not.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Um, so it's interesting too because I'm seeing some of that happening for B2B brands. So like
Right.
outside of the consumer space, it's more having thought leaders being able to talk to each other, right? So changing, I always talk about the social CEO and how if a CEO is active on social media, the company tends to benefit from that, right?
Hmm.
Because they're perceived as more competitive. And even if, you know, CEOs for B2B brands, the space that they're usually working in is fairly small. So their competitors are often their colleagues as well, or their peers, right? So the CEO at a competitive company is someone that's still like in their inner circle that has like great things. And I think Clubhouse is kind of removing some of those barriers for them to be able to connect and talk as colleagues, not as brand competitors.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So it's almost, yeah, and they're in that sphere as well. They're learning from each other, expanding, and yeah, so it goes both into consumer and B2B.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I think if I had to summarize like a couple things for people to know about Clubhouse is that it is limited access right now. So if you don't have iOS device, we don't know when Android's going to be available. There's just no timeline. So, you know, it might be tough for some people to get on the platform. And part of that exclusivity is that it's also invite only. So you got to know someone to get in there. And that can make it challenging for marketing teams and PR teams to help monitor conversations, to prepare whoever they've got speaking or wanting to speak to do it. But there's also a very low barrier to entry to start talking, right? Anyone can talk at any time. So this is such a good way to trial some speaking points or try new messaging in a potentially lower risk environment. It's not meant to be recorded, so it kind of lives in the moment and then moves on. I'm not saying that people don't illegally record from it, but it is a good place if you're like working out messaging or trying to get your thoughts together on something to try it there, get some immediate feedback from people in these conversations, see what kind of audience it draws, and take your learnings from there. You know, and I think there's a lot of potential for both B2B and consumer sides of companies to take advantage and play here. I think metrics and seeing immediate ROI is going to be tricky for so it's going to be one of those things where if you're committing to Clubhouse, you're committing to a test, right? You're not going to see an immediate, ooh, look, we did a Clubhouse and I can tell you that we got 40 new people following us on social or on our website or buying things from us. Like, it's going to be a complicated, messy trail to unwind it and figure it all out later. But it's something that brands should think about and think about if they want to commit the time.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So all in all, try to get onto Clubhouse if you can.
Yeah. Ask your friends for invites. And there's some information about the secret side door that we'll leave you to find on your own, but there is a sneaky side door. If you know someone, you gotta know someone to get in is still the point here. But there's some clever ways to get on Clubhouse. But this is a great conversation. Thanks, Serena.
Yeah, thank you so much.